The first snowflake that touched Thomas Owen's weathered cheek felt like a warning from God himself. But he pressed forward through the Colorado wilderness anyway, his breath forming white clouds in the freezing December air of 1881. His horse, a sturdy bay mare named Dusty, picked her way carefully through the increasingly treacherous terrain as the snow began to fall harder, transforming the landscape into a white nightmare that swallowed the trail ahead. Thomas pulled his coat tighter, cursing himself for not making camp earlier, but the nearest town of Monticello was still a good 10 miles south, and he had hoped to reach it before nightfall. The sound reached him through the howling wind, so faint at first that he thought he imagined it. A crying sound, high and desperate, cutting through the storm like a knife. Thomas reined Dusty to a halt, straining his ears against the wind. There it was again, two distinct voices wailing in unison, the sound of children in distress. Every instinct told him to ignore it, to keep riding, because nothing good came from stopping in a blizzard like this. But Thomas Owen had never been a man who could turn his back on suffering, not since the war, not since he had seen too many good people die while others looked away. He turned Dusty toward the sound, guiding her off the main trail and into the dense pine forest that flanked the mountain path. The snow was coming down in sheets now, making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. The crying grew louder, more desperate, and Thomas urged his horse faster through the drifts. His heart pounded in his chest as he pushed through a thick stand of pines and found himself in a small clearing. The scene before him would haunt his dreams for years to come. A wagon lay on its side, one wheel completely shattered, the canvas covering torn and flapping in the wind. Two small girls, no more than 3 years old, stood in the snow beside the wreckage, their faces red from crying and cold, their thin dresses completely inadequate for the brutal weather. They were identical twins, with dark curly hair plastered to their pale faces, and they clutched each other with tiny hands that were already turning blue. Thomas dismounted in an instant, rushing toward the children, but their cries directed his attention to the wagon itself. A woman lay pinned beneath the wreckage, her face pale and twisted in pain, blood staining the snow around her. She could not have been more than 25, with the same dark hair as her daughters, and eyes that blazed with a fierce determination despite her obvious agony. "Please," she gasped, reaching out a trembling hand toward Thomas. "Save them. My girls, please save them." Thomas knelt beside her, quickly assessing the situation. The wagon had her trapped from the waist down, and he could see from the angle of the wreckage and the amount of blood that she was hurt badly, maybe too badly for him to help. "I will get you all out of here," he said firmly, already moving to examine how the wagon had her pinned. "No," the woman said, her voice gaining strength through sheer force of will. "There is no time. The storm is getting worse. Save my girls. Promise me you will save them." "I am not leaving you here to die," Thomas said stubbornly, putting his hands on the wagon frame and trying to lift it. The wood groaned but did not budge, and he could feel the weight of it, far too heavy for one man to move alone. The woman grabbed his arm with surprising strength, her eyes locking onto his. "Listen to me. My name is Catherine James. Those are my daughters, Clara and Caroline. Their father died 6 months ago, and I have no family left. If you do not take them now, they will freeze to death trying to stay with me. Please, I am begging you." Thomas looked at the twins, who had stopped crying and were now watching him with wide, terrified eyes. They were so small, so fragile, and he could see their lips turning blue as the temperature continued to drop. The snow was already halfway up their little legs, and their shivering had become violent. "I will save all of you," Thomas said firmly, returning his attention to the wagon. I do not leave people behind." Catherine's laugh was bitter and cut short by a cough that brought blood to her lips. "You sound like a good man, Thomas Owen, but being good does not change reality. I can feel it. I am dying. My legs are crushed and I am bleeding inside. But my girls, they have a chance if you take them now." "How did you know my name?" Thomas asked, surprised. "Your saddlebag," Catherine said weakly, "has your name on it. Seemed like fate you finding us. Please, take my babies. Keep them safe. Raise them well. Promise me." Thomas felt something crack inside his chest. He was 30 years old, unmarried, a drifter who made his living breaking horses and doing odd jobs across Colorado and Wyoming. He knew nothing about raising children, let alone twin girls. But as he looked into Catherine's desperate eyes, he knew he could not refuse her dying wish. "I promise," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I will keep them safe. I will raise them as my own. You have my word." Catherine's face relaxed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you, thank you." "There is a bag in the wagon under the seat. It has their things, some money, papers. Take it all." She coughed again, more blood appearing. "Girls, come here." The twins stumbled through the snow to their mother's side, and Thomas had to look away as Catherine whispered to them, her voice too quiet for him to hear over the wind. He retrieved the bag she had mentioned, finding it surprisingly heavy, along with a few blankets that were still dry. When he turned back, Catherine was kissing each girl on the forehead, her movements slow and labored. "Be good for Mr. Owen," she told them. "He is going to take care of you now. I love you both so much. Never forget that your mama loved you more than anything in this world." "Mama," one of the girls whimpered, and the sound of it nearly broke Thomas's heart. "You need to go now," Catherine said, looking up at Thomas. "Before the storm gets worse, before they freeze." Thomas nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He wrapped both girls in the blankets, creating a bundle that he could carry, and lifted them against his chest. They were so light, barely more than feathers, and they clung to him with desperate strength. "Wait," Catherine said. "One more thing. In the bag there is a locket. It was my mother's. Make sure the girls have it when they are older, and tell them about me. Tell them their mother's last thoughts were of them." "I will," Thomas promised. "I swear it." Catherine smiled, a peaceful expression settling over her features. "Then go. Ride hard. Do not look back. And Thomas Owen, thank you for being the kind of man who stops when he hears children crying in the snow." Thomas mounted Dusty with difficulty. The twins wrapped securely in his arms and turned the horse back toward the trail. The last thing he saw was Catherine's hand raised in farewell, before the snow swallowed the clearing from view. He rode as hard as he dared through the blizzard, the twins sobbing against his chest, his own tears freezing on his face. The ride to Monticello took 3 hours that felt like 3 days. By the time Thomas saw the lights of the town through the snow, he was half frozen, and the twins had cried themselves to sleep in his arms. He went straight to the doctor's house, pounding on the door until an older man with gray hair and spectacles answered. "Help," Thomas said simply. "Children. Cold." The doctor, whose name was Harold Simmons, immediately took charge, ushering Thomas inside and calling for his wife. Within minutes, the twins were being warmed by the fire, wrapped in fresh blankets and given hot broth to drink. Thomas sat nearby, too exhausted to move, while Dr. Simmons examined the girls. "They will be fine," the doctor pronounced after a thorough examination. "You got them here just in time. Another hour in that storm and we would be having a different conversation. Where are their parents?" Thomas explained the situation, his voice flat with exhaustion and grief. Dr. Simmons listened gravely, his wife Martha dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Those poor babies," Martha said, "and their poor mother. What will you do with them, Mr. Owen?" "I made a promise," Thomas said simply. I told their mother I would raise them, so that is what I am going to do." The doctor and his wife exchanged glances. "That is a noble sentiment," Dr. Simmons said carefully. "But raising two small children, especially girls, is no easy task for a single man. Perhaps it would be better to find them a proper home, a family in town who could take them in." "No," Thomas said firmly. "I gave my word. They are my responsibility now." Martha Simmons smiled warmly. "Then you are going to need help. Stay with us for a few days while you get your bearings. I can teach you the basics of caring for small children, and we can help you figure out what you will need." Thomas wanted to refuse to maintain his independence, but he looked at the sleeping twins and realized he had no idea what he was doing. "I would appreciate that, madam. Thank you." He stayed with the Simmons for 5 days, during which time the blizzard raged outside, and he learned more about children than he had ever thought possible. Martha taught him how to dress the girls, how to fix their hair, what foods they could eat, and how to comfort them when they cried for their mother. The twins, Clara and Caroline, were quiet and withdrawn at first, clinging to each other and barely speaking. But slowly, they began to warm to Thomas, especially when he told them stories or carved them little wooden animals with his pocket knife. On the 6th day, the storm finally broke, and Thomas knew it was time to make decisions about the future. He could not stay in Monticello indefinitely, living on the Simmons charity. He needed a plan, a way to provide for the girls and create a stable home for them. He opened Catherine's bag and examined its contents properly for the first time. Inside, he found a collection of children's clothes, a few toys, and a leather wallet containing $200 in bills and coins. There were also papers, including birth certificates for the twins showing they had been born on March 15, 1878, and a marriage certificate showing that Catherine James had been married to a man named William James in Denver in 1876. There was a note in Catherine's handwriting, addressed to whoever might read it, explaining that her husband had died in a mining accident, and she had been traveling to stay with distant relatives in New Mexico when the wagon accident occurred. At the bottom of the bag, Thomas found the locket Catherine had mentioned. It was silver, delicately engraved with flowers, and inside were 2 tiny portraits, one of Catherine and one of a man who must have been William James. Thomas studied the images, thinking about the family that had been torn apart, and made a silent promise to honor their memory. "What are you thinking about?" Dr. Simmons asked, entering the room where Thomas sat. "I need to find work," Thomas said. "Something stable, where I can keep the girls with me. I have been drifting for years, but that life will not work anymore." "There is a ranch about 15 miles west of here," the doctor said thoughtfully. "The Triple T Ranch, owned by a man named Tom Turner. I heard he is looking for a foreman, someone who knows horses and can manage a crew. The pay is good, and there is a house on the property that comes with the position. It might be perfect for your situation." Thomas felt a spark of hope. Would he be willing to hire a man with 2 small children? "Tom is a fair man," Dr. Simmons said, "and his wife died last year, so he understands loss. I could write you a letter of introduction if you like." "I would appreciate that more than I can say," Thomas said. 2 days later, Thomas rode out to the Triple T Ranch with Clara and Caroline bundled up warmly and seated in front of him on Dusty. The ranch was impressive, with a large main house, several barns, and miles of fenced pasture where cattle and horses grazed. Tom Turner turned out to be a man in his 50s, weathered and direct, with sharp blue eyes that seemed to see right through Thomas. "Simmons says you are good with horses," Turner said without preamble after Thomas introduced himself. "Yes, sir," Thomas replied. I have been breaking and training horses for 10 years. I worked on ranches in Wyoming and Montana before coming to Colorado. Turner nodded, then looked at the twins who were holding hands and watching him nervously. And the children? They are my daughters now, Thomas said firmly. Their mother died in the blizzard. I promised I would raise them, and I keep my promises. I am looking for steady work where I can provide them a good home. If that is a problem, I understand, but I will not be separated from them. Turner studied Thomas for a long moment, then surprised him by smiling. I respect a man who keeps his word. Truth is, Mr. Owen, I have been looking for someone I can trust to help run this place. My own son has no interest in ranching, moved back east to become a lawyer. I need a foreman who can handle the horses, manage the hands, and help me plan for the future. The job comes with a 3-bedroom house about a quarter-mile from the main house, decent pay, and room for you to grow with the ranch. Think you can handle that while raising 2 little girls? Yes, sir, Thomas said without hesitation. I can and I will. Then you are hired, Turner said, extending his hand. Welcome to the Triple T, Thomas Owen. You and your daughters can move into the house immediately. The house was better than anything Thomas had dared hope for. It was small but well built, with a main room that served as kitchen and living space, 2 bedrooms, and even an indoor pump for water. It had a wood stove that kept the place warm, real glass windows, and furniture that the previous foreman had left behind. For the first time in years, Thomas had a real home, and he felt a weight lift from his shoulders as he carried the twins inside. Over the next few months, Thomas threw himself into his new life with determination. He proved to be an excellent foreman, earning the respect of the ranch hands with his knowledge of horses and his fair but firm management style. The ranch prospered under his guidance, and Tom Turner came to rely on him more and more. But it was in his role as father that Thomas truly transformed. He learned to braid the girls' hair, though his first attempts were comically crooked and made them giggle. He learned to cook simple meals, expanding beyond his bachelor diet of beans and bacon to include vegetables and even the occasional pie. He read to Clara and Caroline every night from a collection of books he bought in town, and he made sure they had warm clothes, good shoes, and toys to play with. The money Catherine had left helped, but Thomas was careful with it, saving most of it for the girls' future. The twins slowly came out of their shell, their natural cheerfulness returning as they adjusted to their new life. Clara proved to be the more adventurous of the two, always climbing trees and exploring the ranch, while Caroline was quieter and more thoughtful, preferring to sit with books or help Thomas in the kitchen. They were both bright and loving, and Thomas found himself growing to love them with a fierce protectiveness that surprised him. It was in late April, nearly 5 months after he had found the girls in the snow, that Thomas's carefully constructed new life took an unexpected turn. Tom Turner called him to the main house one evening and told him that his niece would be arriving the next day to spend the summer at the ranch. She is a schoolteacher from Denver, Turner explained. Her name is Charlotte Johnson, and she just finished a difficult school year. I invited her to come stay with me for a few months to rest and recover. She is a good woman, smart and kind. I think you will like her. Thomas nodded politely, not thinking much of it. He had little time for socializing, focused as he was on his work and the girls. But the next afternoon, when Charlotte Johnson stepped down from the stagecoach in Monticello, he felt something shift in his chest. She was beautiful, with honey-colored hair pinned up in a simple style, warm brown eyes, and a quick smile that lit up her whole face. But it was not just her looks that caught Thomas's attention. There was an intelligence in her eyes, a quiet strength in the way she carried herself, that spoke of someone who had faced challenges and overcome them. She looked to be in her mid-20s, and she wore a practical traveling dress that was neat and well-maintained but not extravagant. "You must be Thomas Owen," she said, extending her hand when Tom Turner introduced them. "My uncle has written so much about you in his letters. He says you are the best foreman he has ever had." Thomas shook her hand, acutely aware of his calluses against her smooth skin. "Your uncle is generous with his praise, Miss Johnson. Welcome to Monticello. Please call me Charlotte," she said warmly. "I am not one for formality, especially out here in Colorado, and I hear you have 2 daughters. I would love to meet them." Something about the genuine interest in her voice made Thomas relax. "They are back at my house with Mrs. Patterson, a woman from town who watches them when I need to be away. Would you like to meet them now?" "I would love that," Charlotte said. Thus began a summer that would change everything for Thomas Owen. Charlotte proved to be wonderful with the twins, who took to her immediately. She played games with them, taught them songs, and started giving them informal lessons in reading and writing. Thomas would come home from working on the ranch to find Charlotte sitting on his porch with Clara and Caroline, all 3 of them laughing over some shared joke. At first, Thomas tried to maintain a professional distance. Charlotte was Tom Turner's niece, educated and refined, while he was just a ranch foreman with a rough past and no formal schooling past the age of 12. But Charlotte seemed completely unaware of or uninterested in such social distinctions. She sought out Thomas's company, asking him about the ranch, about the horses, about his life. She listened with genuine interest when he talked, and she shared stories of her own experiences teaching in Denver. "Why did you become a teacher?" Thomas asked her one evening in late May. They were sitting on his porch while the twins played in the yard, chasing fireflies in the gathering dusk. Charlotte was quiet for a moment, watching the girls. "When I was young, my family lost everything in the panic of '73. We went from comfortable to destitute almost overnight. My father could not find work, and we were on the verge of losing our home. But my teacher, Miss Anderson, she helped my mother find work at the school, and she tutored me for free so I could continue my education. She changed our lives. I became a teacher because I wanted to do the same for other children, to give them opportunities they might not otherwise have." "That is admirable," Thomas said quietly. Charlotte turned to look at him, her eyes soft in the fading light. "What about you, Thomas? What made you stop drifting and settle down here?" Thomas told her the whole story then, about finding the twins in the snow, about Catherine's dying wish, about the promise he had made. Charlotte listened without interrupting, and when he finished, he saw tears glistening in her eyes. "That was the most selfless thing I have ever heard," she said. "Most men would have left those children to their fate or turned them over to an orphanage at the first opportunity. But you kept your promise. You gave up your freedom to give them a home and a family." "It was not a sacrifice," Thomas said honestly. "Those girls saved me as much as I saved them. Before I found them, I was just drifting through life with no purpose, no direction. They gave me a reason to be better, to build something lasting." Charlotte reached out and took his hand, the gesture simple but profound. "You are a good man, Thomas Owen." Thomas looked down at their joined hands, feeling his heart pound in his chest. "Charlotte, I need to be honest with you. I am starting to have feelings for you that go beyond friendship. But I understand if you do not feel the same way. You are educated, refined, from a good family. I'm just a ranch hand with 2 small children who are not even mine by blood." Charlotte squeezed his hand tighter. "Thomas, do you think I care about any of that? I have spent the last month watching you with those girls, seeing how patient and loving you are, how hard you work, how honorable you are in everything you do. I have feelings for you too, feelings I have never had for anyone else. The only question is what we are going to do about it." Thomas felt hope surge through him, bright and overwhelming. "I would like to court you properly if you will let me. I know I do not have much to offer, but I would do everything in my power to make you happy." "You already make me happy," Charlotte said softly. "Every day I spend with you and the girls makes me happier than I have been in years. Yes, Thomas, I would be honored if you would court me." They sat there on the porch as the stars came out, holding hands and talking until the twins fell asleep in the grass and had to be carried to bed. It was the beginning of something beautiful, something neither of them had expected to find but both desperately needed. Over the next 2 months, Thomas and Charlotte's relationship deepened and grew. They went on long walks together while the twins played, sharing their hopes and dreams for the future. Charlotte helped Thomas improve his reading, patiently working with him in the evenings while the girls slept. Thomas taught Charlotte to ride, delighting in her nervous laughter as she learned to trust her horse. They attended church together in Monticello, presenting themselves to the community as a couple, and the townspeople welcomed the match with warm approval. The twins adored Charlotte and started calling her Miss Charlie, a nickname that made her laugh every time. She was endlessly patient with them, helping Clara with her boundless energy and encouraging Caroline's quieter interests. Thomas would watch Charlotte with his daughters and feel his love for her grow stronger every day. But summer could not last forever, and as August drew to a close, Charlotte received a telegram from the school board in Denver informing her that they expected her to return for the new school year in September. The news cast a shadow over the house, and Thomas found himself faced with the prospect of losing the woman he had come to love. "Come with me to Denver," Charlotte suggested one evening. "You could find work there, bring the girls. There are good schools opportunities." But Thomas shook his head. "I made a commitment to Tom Turner, and I keep my commitments. The ranch needs me, especially with fall roundup coming. And honestly, Charlotte, I do not think city life is right for the girls. They are thriving here, with space to run and clean air to breathe. I cannot uproot them again so soon after they lost their mother." Charlotte understood, but understanding did not make the situation easier. They spent Charlotte's last week at the ranch in a state of quiet sadness, trying to make the most of every moment while dreading the inevitable goodbye. The night before Charlotte was to leave after the twins were asleep, Thomas asked her to sit with him on the porch one last time. He had been thinking about this moment for days, weighing his options, considering every angle. But in the end, the decision was simple because his feelings were clear. "Charlotte," he said, taking both her hands in his, "I love you. I have loved you since the first time I saw you smile at the girls. I know we have only known each other a few months, and I know I am not the kind of man you probably imagined yourself with, but I want to marry you. I want you to be my wife, to be a mother to Clara and Caroline, to build a life with me here on this ranch. I do not have a ring to offer you tonight, but I have my heart, my promise to love and cherish you for the rest of my days. Will you marry me?" Charlotte's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Thomas, I will marry you. I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes. I was dreading going back to Denver, dreading leaving you and the girls, but I did not want to presume, did not want to put pressure on you." Thomas pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "Then stay. Marry me this week before you have to go back. We can send a telegram to the school board telling them you will not be returning. I know it means giving up your career, and I would never ask you to do that lightly." "But Charlotte, I cannot imagine my life without you now." "I do not want to go back," Charlotte said into his chest. "I want to stay here with you with the girls. Teaching in a one-room school in Monticello would make me just as happy as teaching in Denver, maybe happier, because I would be home with my family every night. Yes, Thomas. Let's get married this week." They were wed 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the Monticello church, with Tom Turner standing up for Thomas and Martha Simmons standing up for Charlotte. The twins wore new dresses for the occasion and carried wildflowers as they walked down the aisle ahead of Charlotte. It was a small wedding, attended by the people of Monticello who had come to know and respect Thomas over the past months, and it was perfect. That night, in the little house that was now truly their home, Thomas and Charlotte began their married life together. The next morning, they woke to the twins jumping on their bed, giggling and shouting about how they had a mama now, and Thomas thought his heart might burst from happiness. Charlotte proved to be everything Thomas could have hoped for in a wife and more. She was not just a mother to the twins, but a true partner to Thomas in every way. She took a position teaching at the small school in Monticello, working with children of all ages and earning the community's respect with her dedication and skill. In the evenings, she worked alongside Thomas to improve the house, adding curtains and rugs, planting a garden, and transforming the bare structure into a warm and welcoming home. The twins flourished under Charlotte's guidance. She enrolled them in her school when they turned 5, teaching them alongside the other children and delighting in their quick minds and eager questions. Clara remained adventurous and fearless, while Caroline developed a love of books and learning that Charlotte nurtured carefully. Both girls grew up knowing they were loved, secure in the family that Thomas and Charlotte had built for them. A year after their wedding, Charlotte discovered she was expecting a child. Thomas was overjoyed but also nervous, worried about the dangers of childbirth and the prospect of adding to their already busy household. But Charlotte faced her pregnancy with her characteristic calm strength, continuing to teach until she was too far along to comfortably stand all day, and preparing the house for the new arrival with practical efficiency. In May of 1883, Charlotte gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him James, after Catherine's married name, a way of honoring the woman whose sacrifice had brought them all together. The twins were ecstatic to have a baby brother, helping to care for him with an eagerness that sometimes worried Charlotte but always made Thomas smile. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm over the next few years. Thomas continued to excel as foreman of the Triple T Ranch, becoming Tom Turner's most trusted advisor and eventually a partner in the business when Turner decided to semi-retire. The ranch prospered, expanding its operations and becoming one of the most successful in Colorado. Thomas's hard work and dedication paid off in financial security for his family, allowing him to provide for Charlotte and the children in ways he had never imagined possible. Charlotte's school became known throughout the region for the quality of education it provided, and families moved to Monticello specifically so their children could learn from her. She taught with passion and dedication, inspiring her students to reach for opportunities beyond their small town, while also instilling in them a love for their community and its values. The twins grew into remarkable young women. Clara, true to her adventurous nature, developed a love for horses that rivaled Thomas's own. She spent every free moment in the stables, learning to train and care for the animals, and by the time she was 12, she was helping Thomas break the new horses that came to the ranch. Caroline's love of learning blossomed into a talent for writing and literature, and Charlotte encouraged her to pursue her passion, helping her to get several of her short stories published in regional magazines when she was just 16. James grew up with the best of both his sister's qualities, adventurous enough to explore the world around him but thoughtful enough to appreciate the beauty he found. He idolized Thomas, following him around the ranch and learning everything he could about horses, cattle, and the land. But he also had his mother's gentle spirit and her gift for bringing out the best in people. In 1886, when the twins were 8 and James was 3, Charlotte gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Elizabeth. The arrival of the new babies brought fresh joy to the household, and the older children stepped up to help care for their younger sisters with a maturity that made both Thomas and Charlotte proud. The years passed in a blur of hard work, laughter, challenges, and triumphs. Thomas watched his children grow, marveling at the family he had somehow been blessed with, never forgetting the snowy night when 2 crying girls had changed his life forever. He made sure to tell Clara and Caroline about their birth mother regularly, keeping Catherine's memory alive and honoring the promise he had made to her. When the twins turned 18 in 1896, Thomas took them on a trip back to the place where he had found them. The clearing looked different in the summer sunshine, peaceful and green, with no sign of the tragedy that had occurred there 15 years before. Together, they placed a marker to honor Catherine James, thanking her for her sacrifice and promising to live lives worthy of her gift. "She would be so proud of you both," Thomas told the twins, his voice thick with emotion. "You have grown into amazing young women. I hope you know how much I love you, how grateful I am that I found you that night." Clara hugged him tightly. "You are our father in every way that matters." "We could not have asked for anyone better." Caroline added her own embrace. "Mama Catherine gave us life, but you and Mama Charlotte taught us how to live. We love you so much." They stood together in that clearing, a family bound not by blood alone but by love and choice and sacrifice, and Thomas felt the circle complete. He had kept his promise to Catherine James. He had saved her daughters, raised them well, and given them a life full of love and opportunity. And in doing so, he had found his own salvation, his own purpose, his own great love. Charlotte was waiting for them when they returned to the ranch, standing on the porch of the house that had grown over the years to accommodate their expanding family. James and the younger twins were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the warm summer breeze. Thomas looked at his wife, still beautiful after all these years, and felt his heart swell with gratitude for the life they had built together. That evening, the whole family gathered for dinner, a chaotic and joyful affair with 7 children of various ages all talking at once and vying for attention. Thomas sat at the head of the table, Charlotte at his side, and looked at each of their faces in turn. Clara and Caroline, poised on the edge of adulthood, ready to make their own way in the world. James, growing tall and strong at 13, already showing signs of the man he would become. Emma and Elizabeth, 10 years old and full of mischief and charm. And the 2 youngest, born just the year before, baby twins again, boys this time, named William and Thomas Jr. 9 children in total, a family that had started with a promise made in the snow and grown into something beyond anything Thomas had imagined possible. Some of the children he had chosen, some Charlotte had given him, but he loved them all equally and completely. After dinner, when the older children had taken the younger ones to bed, Thomas and Charlotte sat together on the porch swing, watching the stars come out over the Colorado mountains. It had become their ritual over the years, these quiet moments together at the end of long days, time to reconnect and remember why they had chosen each other. "Do you ever regret it?" Thomas asked, not for the first time. "Giving up your life in Denver, your career as a teacher in a big school?" Charlotte leaned her head on his shoulder, exactly as she always did when he asked this question. "Not for a single moment. I have a wonderful life, Thomas. I teach children who need me, I have a husband who loves me, and I have a family that fills my heart with joy every day. What more could I possibly want?" "We could have had an easier life," Thomas said. "Fewer children, more money to spend on ourselves, time to travel and see the world." Charlotte laughed, the sound as bright and warm as it had been the day he met her. "Thomas Owen, when have you ever known me to want an easy life? Our life is full and rich and meaningful. Yes, we work hard. Yes, we have struggled sometimes. But we have also loved deeply, laughed often, and built something beautiful together. I would not trade a single moment of it for anything." Thomas pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "I love you, Charlotte Owen, more than I ever thought it was possible to love another person." "And I love you," Charlotte replied. "Thank you for asking me to stay that summer. Thank you for choosing me." "I think we chose each other," Thomas said. They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love that would last a lifetime. Inside the house, their children slept safely, each one a testament to the power of promise, sacrifice, and love. As the years continued to unfold, Thomas and Charlotte's legacy grew beyond their immediate family. The Triple T Ranch became known throughout Colorado as a place of innovation and integrity, setting standards for humane treatment of animals and fair wages for workers that other ranches began to emulate. Thomas trained dozens of young men in the art of horsemanship, passing on his knowledge and his values to a new generation. Charlotte's school produced students who went on to become teachers, lawyers, doctors, and business owners, carrying the lessons she had taught them about character and compassion into their own lives. Former students would return to Monticello years later, bringing their own children to meet the woman who had inspired them to pursue their dreams. Clara eventually married a rancher from Montana, a man much like Thomas in his quiet strength and dedication to the land. She continued to work with horses, becoming one of the most respected trainers in the region, and she and her husband built their own successful ranch while raising 4 children of their own. Caroline pursued her writing, eventually publishing a collection of short stories about life in the West that received critical acclaim. She married a newspaper editor from Denver, a kind man who supported her work and encouraged her talent. Together they had 3 children and split their time between the city and the ranch, ensuring their children grew up knowing both worlds. James took over the management of the Triple T Ranch when Tom Turner finally retired fully, working alongside Thomas to continue building the family business. He married a schoolteacher, a former student of Charlotte's, and they had 5 children who grew up learning the values of hard work, honesty, and compassion that Thomas and Charlotte had instilled in all their children. The younger children each found their own paths as they grew. Emma became a nurse, Elizabeth a teacher like her mother. William studied law, and Thomas Jr. followed in his father's footsteps with the horses. Each of them carried forward the legacy of love and commitment that defined their family. In 1910, Thomas and Charlotte celebrated their 27th wedding anniversary with a party attended by their children, their grandchildren, and what felt like half of Monticello. Thomas was 59 years old, his hair gray and his hands marked by decades of hard work, but his eyes were still clear and his step still steady. Charlotte was 52, her beauty matured but not diminished by the years, her spirit as bright and loving as ever. At the party, Clara and Caroline presented their parents with a gift, a beautiful leather-bound book they had created together. Inside were the stories of their family, written by Caroline and illustrated by an artist friend of Clara's, documenting the history from that snowy night in 1881 through the present day. On the first page was a picture of Catherine James, drawn from the portrait in her locket, with a dedication that read, "To Catherine, whose gift of love made all of this possible." Thomas read through the book with tears streaming down his face, remembering every moment, every challenge, every joy. When he finished, he stood and raised his glass to the assembled crowd. 29 years ago, he said, his voice strong despite his emotion. I was a drifter with no family, no purpose, no direction. Then I heard two little girls crying in the snow and their mother asked me to save them. I promised I would save all of them, but the truth is, they saved me. Catherine James saved me by trusting me with her most precious treasures. Clara and Caroline saved me by giving me a reason to become a better man. And Charlotte saved me by showing me what love really means. He turned to Charlotte, taking her hand. You are the love of my life, the best decision I ever made, the reason every day is worth living. Thank you for saying yes that night on the porch, for staying, for building this life with me. Charlotte stood and kissed him, to the cheers and applause of their family and friends. You saved me too, Thomas Owen. You and those two beautiful girls who brought us together. I love you today and always. The party continued late into the night, filled with music and laughter and stories. Thomas watched his grandchildren playing in the yard just as his own children had once done, and he marveled at the continuation of life, the way love multiplied and expanded through generations. That night, lying in bed beside Charlotte, Thomas thought back to that moment in the snow when he had made his promise to Catherine. He had kept his word in every way that mattered. He had saved her daughters, raised them with love and care, and helped them become wonderful women who were now raising their own families with the same values. He had saved Catherine's legacy by making sure her sacrifice meant something, by building something beautiful from the tragedy of her death. But more than that, he had saved himself, from loneliness, from purposelessness, from a life half-lived. And he had found in Charlotte a love so deep and true that it had sustained him through nearly 3 decades of joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. What are you thinking about? Charlotte asked sleepily, curling into his side. Just counting my blessings, Thomas said, wrapping his arm around her, and realizing that I am the luckiest man who ever lived. We are both lucky, Charlotte said. We found each other, built a family, created a life worth living. That is more than most people ever get. It is everything, Thomas agreed. They fell asleep in each other's arms as they had every night for 27 years, secure in their love and grateful for the journey that had brought them together. The years that followed were gentler, slower. Thomas gradually transitioned more of the ranch work to James, spending more time with his grandchildren, and pursuing the hobbies he had never had time for. He taught his grandsons to carve wood, just as he had once carved toys for his own children. He read to his granddaughters, sharing his love of stories that Charlotte had cultivated in him so many years before. Charlotte continued teaching until she was 60, finally retiring when her health began to decline slightly. She spent her remaining years writing her memoirs, determined to preserve the story of their family for future generations. She also dedicated time to working with young mothers in the community, sharing the wisdom she had gained from raising 9 children and helping others navigate the challenges of parenthood. In 1920, on a beautiful spring day much like the one when they had first met, Charlotte Owen passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 62. She had been suffering from a weak heart for several years, but she had lived fully and joyfully until the very end, surrounded by the love of her family. Thomas was devastated by her loss. For weeks after her funeral, he moved through his days in a fog of grief, unable to imagine his life without the woman who had been his partner, his love, his best friend for 37 years. His children worried about him, taking turns staying at the house to make sure he was eating and caring for himself. It was Clara and Caroline who finally helped him find his way back to living. They came to visit him together one evening, 3 months after Charlotte's death, and sat with him on the porch where so many important moments of his life had occurred. "Papa," Clara said gently, "Mama would not want you to stop living just because she is gone. She would want you to find joy again, to keep loving, to keep being part of this family she helped you build." "She was my everything," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "How do I go on without her?" Caroline took his hand. "You carry her with you the way you taught us to carry our birth mother. You honor her memory by living well, by continuing to love us and the grandchildren, by being the man she fell in love with all those years ago." Thomas looked at his daughters, these women he had raised from tiny children found in the snow, and he saw the wisdom and strength they had developed. "When did you both get so wise?" "We had excellent teachers," Clara said, smiling through her tears. "You and Mama Charlotte showed us how to live with courage and love. Now you have to keep showing us, Papa. We still need you." Thomas took a deep breath, feeling something shift in his chest. The grief did not go away, would never fully go away, but he felt the weight of it lighten slightly. "You are right. Charlotte would be furious with me for wallowing like this. She always believed in moving forward, in finding purpose even in pain." "Exactly," Caroline said. "So let's move forward together. Tell us a story about Mama, something happy that will make us all smile." So Thomas told them about the day he had taught Charlotte to ride, how she had been so nervous but so determined, and how she had laughed with pure joy the first time she managed to canter on her own. The memory made them all smile, and then Clara shared her own favorite memory, and Caroline added hers, and soon they were all talking and laughing and crying together, honoring Charlotte by celebrating her life rather than mourning her death. Thomas lived another 12 years after Charlotte's passing, dying peacefully in his sleep in 1932 at the age of 81. In those final years, he saw the family continue to grow and thrive. He met great-grandchildren and even a few great-great-grandchildren. He saw the ranch transition fully to James's management and watched with pride as his son proved to be just as capable and innovative as Thomas had been. He attended the weddings of grandchildren, the christenings of babies, the celebrations of achievements large and small. He spent his final years writing his own account of his life, wanting to ensure that future generations understood where they came from and the sacrifices that had made their lives possible. He wrote about his childhood in Missouri, about the war, about the years of drifting before he found his purpose. But most of all, he wrote about that night in the snow, about Catherine's trust and sacrifice, about the promise he had made and kept. On the last page of his memoir, written just weeks before his death, Thomas Owen concluded with these words: "I have lived a long life, full of blessings I did not deserve and love I did nothing to earn. I started as a nobody, a drifter with no family and no future. But then I heard children crying in the snow and everything changed. I made a promise to save them all, mother and daughters both, and though I could not save Catherine James from death, I believe I honored her final wish. I raised her daughters with love, gave them a good life, and watched them become extraordinary women who are now raising families of their own. In saving those girls, I found my own salvation. I found purpose and love and a reason to become better than I was. I found Charlotte, the love of my life, and together we built something beautiful and lasting. We raised 9 children, each one precious beyond measure. We created a legacy of love and commitment that will continue long after I am gone. If there is any wisdom I can pass on to those who come after me, it is this: keep your promises. Love without reservation. Choose courage over comfort, compassion over convenience, and always, always stop when you hear someone crying in the snow. You never know whose life you might save, or whose life might save yours in return. To my children, my grandchildren, and all who come after, know that you are loved, that you come from love, and that love is the only thing that truly lasts. Carry it forward. Honor the sacrifices that brought you here. Live well and love deeply. And to Catherine James, wherever your spirit rests, thank you for trusting me with your daughters. I kept my promise. I hope I made you proud. Thomas Owen was buried beside Charlotte in the Monticello Cemetery. Their graves marked with a simple stone that read Thomas and Charlotte Owen, beloved parents and grandparents who built a legacy of love. Near their graves, the family placed a smaller marker for Catherine James, bringing her into the family even in death, honoring the woman whose sacrifice had started it all. The family gathered from across the country for Thomas's funeral, filling the church to capacity and spilling out into the street. They told stories about him, about his kindness and strength, his wisdom and humor, his unwavering commitment to his family. Clara and Caroline spoke about the night he had found them in the snow, about the promise he had made and kept, about the father he had chosen to be and the man he had inspired them to become. After the funeral, the family returned to the ranch, which James continued to manage with the same dedication his father had shown. They gathered in the main house, 3 generations sharing memories and strengthening the bonds that Thomas and Charlotte had forged. The youngest children played in the yard where Thomas's own children had once played. Their laughter, a testament to the continuation of life and love. Years turned into decades, and the family continued to grow. The Triple T Ranch remained in the family, passed down through generations, each one adding their own innovations while maintaining the core values Thomas had established. His descendants became teachers and ranchers, doctors and lawyers, artists and entrepreneurs, each one carrying forward the lessons he had taught about integrity, compassion, and the importance of keeping promises. The story of how Thomas had found Clara and Caroline in the snow became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The memoirs he and Charlotte had written were carefully preserved, becoming treasured family heirlooms that helped keep their memory alive. The locket that had belonged to Catherine James was passed down through the women of the family, a reminder of the sacrifice that had brought them all together. In 1981, exactly 100 years after that fateful night in the snow, the family held a reunion at the ranch. Hundreds of descendants gathered to celebrate the centennial of the family's beginning, to honor Thomas and Charlotte and Catherine, and to recommit to the values that had sustained them through 4 generations. At the reunion, the oldest living grandchild of Thomas and Charlotte, a woman of 93 who had known them both well, stood before the assembled family and told the story one more time. She spoke of Thomas's courage and compassion, of Charlotte's wisdom and love, of Catherine's ultimate sacrifice. She spoke of the legacy they had created, not just of children and land and material success, but of love and integrity and the importance of choosing to do right even when it is hard. Our family exists because one man heard children crying in the snow and chose to stop, she said. Because he made a promise to a dying woman and kept it, even when it meant completely changing his life. Because he opened his heart to love, first to 2 little girls who needed a father, and then to a woman who would become his partner in building something extraordinary. We are the inheritors of that choice, that promise, that love. Let us honor it by living as they lived, with courage and compassion, with integrity and purpose, with love that knows no bounds. The family cheered and embraced, united across generations by the thread of love that Thomas Owen had begun weaving on that snowy night so long ago. And somewhere, Perhaps the spirits of Thomas and Charlotte and Catherine looked on and smiled, seeing how their sacrifices and choices had created something beautiful and lasting, a legacy of love that would continue as long as the mountains stood and the stars shone over Colorado. The ranch still stands today, still managed by descendants of Thomas Owen, still operating according to the principles he established. In the main house, carefully preserved in a glass case, are the memoirs of Thomas and Charlotte, Catherine's locket, and a small wooden horse that Thomas carved for Clara and Caroline on their first Christmas with him. These artifacts serve as physical reminders of where the family came from, of the love and sacrifice that made everything else possible. And every winter, when the first snow falls over the Colorado mountains, the family remembers. They remember a cowboy who stopped when he heard children crying, a mother who gave everything to save her daughters, and a schoolteacher who chose love over security. They remember that families are built not just on blood but on promises kept, sacrifices made, and love freely given. Thomas Owen had been right when he wrote that love is the only thing that truly lasts. His love for Clara and Caroline, for Charlotte, for all his children and grandchildren, had created a legacy that would endure through the ages. He had promised to save them all, and in ways he could never have imagined on that desperate night in the snow, he had done exactly that. He had saved them, and they had saved him, and together they had created something eternal.